want to thank you guys. These films are incredible, and you've given us not only a new reason to watch them, but a new way to see them via their restoration, and also a new way to hear them via your score. So let's give a big thank you, because this was a huge treat. And maybe before we get into this particular project, I'd love to hear about your guys' relationship just to the work of Man Ray.
Well, Carter and I are different ages, but at the similar age when we were both, I guess, in our teens, we be at different periods, but we both at that time became very inspired and inundated with imagery from surrealism and Dadaism particularly. So, and Man Ray, of course, was a member of sort of Dadaist procedures, and then surrealism as well. So we had that connection since we've known each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think to oversimplify, the objective of the Dadaists was to disrupt the status quo and create things that were kind of transgressive and discursive and disruptive. And I think those were sensibilities that both appealed to Jim and I at sort of the same point in our respective lives at different times.
And when did you get the idea to take the music you had been making and kind of join it together with this work that you love so much? And how, maybe?
Well, we've been playing together for quite some time, doing different things musically, scoring some films, etc. And then quite a long time ago, actually 15 years ago, we were discussing finding some silent films to score, something, and we weren't quite sure. We were looking at different things. There was a René Clair film, La Fille de l'Eau, that was sort of mysterious and interesting, but not quite right. And then I was talking to the daughter of a friend of mine, Jean Labadie, his daughter Alice, who's now 30, but was 15 at the time. And she's a cinephile, and I used to talk, I love inspiration from teenagers, you know, and she said very directly, I remember she pointed her finger at me and said, "No, Jim, you must make music for the films of Man Ray." And I was, okay, and that was decided by Alice, a 15-year-old, and that was exactly right. I mean, it hit me right then, yes, and I talked to Carter, and we were like, yeah. So we hadn't even seen all four of these films at that time. We knew Étoile de Mer, and I think I had seen the Castle of Dice, but I had not seen Imak Bakia or Retour à la Raison. So we discovered these films and then started playing around, improvising to them.
Yeah, around the time that we had started thinking about this, we got an invitation from John Schaefer from WNYC to perform specifically a live score to silent films of our choice. And we said, well, it just so happens we're ready to do this, or we will be soon. So we set about kind of creating a map to a semi-improvised score, a variation of which you hear tonight.
To talk about the images just a little bit, I'm curious about the order and how you put the program together, because it's not chronological.
Yeah, I think it just, Le Retour à la Raison is a very it's his one, what he considers to be Dadaist film. But we wanted to create a program that had a kind of arc, putting the more narrative ones, I guess, for lack of a better description, first and last, kind of pulls you in a certain way to the work. It shows you his sort of narrative tendencies, I think, but without, overdoing it. And then you understand a little bit more about where the more surrealistic Dadaist things came from. But I don't know, it just seemed right.
Yeah, the transition from part 2 to part 3 is pretty incredible. I'm actually really curious what it was like for you guys just to watch it in the audience tonight, since you're so used to performing it live.
It's very strange. We've been playing it live for a long time. In February, we did a pretty extensive tour of Europe, playing it live. And then we never saw it with the music until it was shown in Cannes this year. And it wasn't quite mixed yet. It wasn't quite finished, the restoration either. But it was the first time we sat down and watched it, not playing or listening to each other or trying to hit the right cues or follow our maps. So it was pretty strange. Tonight also.
Yeah, I mean, we try to create something that's a bit immersive kind of trip, and it's really interesting to take it along with all of you from that perspective, rather than sort of, when we're playing, we're trying to kind of play a bit of a chess game with each other and with the films, and with the space and the audience and all of that involved. But this takes away that and allows us to just kind of absorb.
And on the other end of the spectrum, I'd love to hear you guys just talk about your live musical process and what that's like, what that experience is like, because we didn't get to experience it, but I feel like it'd be fun to know what was going on when you guys created the sound.
Well, it's semi-improvised. As Carter said, we have a map that we follow. Carter plays electronics, percussion, drums. I play electric guitar and electronics. So we have synthesizers, some kind of, in my case, somewhat primitive electronics. So, and so we have a map, we have certain keys that we, sort of drift in and out of, I guess. I think you can tell I love playing electric guitars, but I love feedback. So I'm very interested in how feedback's generated with an electric guitar and amplifiers. So there's a lot of feedback coming from my side. Yeah, so that's sort of the orchestration of it. It's just the two of us. And yeah, we have monitors on stage so we can see the films. We're not looking behind us. So we follow our maps. Every performance is somewhat different. We never follow it completely accurately, which is part of the sort of game structure to it anyway. And as you see and if you know anything about Man Ray, he loved games, obviously, designing his own chess pieces, playing chess with Marcel Duchamp throughout his lifetime. I'm very interested, of course, the dice and the reference to Mallarmé, the poet, in that case. But he likes mechanical objects. He likes things that turn and move. He likes playing with things. As I said in the introduction, for Man Ray, the camera itself is a kind of toy. He's sort of freed from the idea of a narrative or anything like that. It's just, so he's shooting through textured glass, using mirrors, water, anything that sort of attracts him.
On that note, I feel like I read that, or maybe watched an interview with you, and you never had a guitar lesson.
Yeah, no, I don't. That may be obvious too. I don't know. I've been playing for a lot of time, but my interest in electric guitars is not to be a virtuoso on the instrument. It's this kind of sound generator. But I can play the thing. Usually I play for a while and then put it down and say, how the hell do you play this thing? But usually after I've played something interesting, and then I say, ironically, how the hell do you play this thing?
Well, it's a very good game spirit, which is much in the spirit of the films, like you guys have said. I think while we have some time left, I want to make sure we give our audience some questions. Do you guys have any out there? I know. Yeah, you go. I think there's a mic. Is there a mic? Yes, no? Maybe? Okay, well, I'll call on you next.
It was nice to see it in this theater too, because the sound is very good here, so it sounded good.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky to have the Walter Reed Theater, one of the best theaters in the world. I've been telling people there's not a bad seat here. and everything sounds incredible, and
Is Walter Reed here tonight? Oh no,
His
Dwayne.
bust is, I don't know if his bust is still out
No,
there.
that's
but
Dwayne Reed. I think. The
Can you
Reed
talk-
brothers.
I apologize. Can you talk a little bit of your collaboration with the Man Ray Trust, and did the representatives listen to the scores before you did the 7-year ongoing tour of the shorts?
Yeah. So there may be some representatives here tonight, and in that instance, I think they may have heard it for the first time. But no, we've had a great relationship with the Man Ray Trust, mostly through an arts organization that administers their rights. But we've had a license to do this on an ongoing basis that we've been able to renew through their grace. And we've always understood them to be supportive of the work. We come at this as huge fans of Man Ray, and really, we're just trying to do some justice as his backing band.
Okay, down front now.
Up to you.
Hell yeah. So I also love synthesizers, and I'm also an amateurist. What's the synth setup like? What's your go-to? What's like your the magic touch for y'all, like synth-wise?
With this, I have an affinity for Moog synthesizers personally. So in this, the setup for this is geared to travel very lightly. So I'm playing a Moog Minotaur primarily, and then samples and other synth sounds from a Teenage Engineering OP1, and that's really the majority of it. But a huge amount of our synth sound comes from our pedals. We use a lot of effects pedals, both of us. And Jim is playing a Critter and Guitari pocket piano, but a lot of the sound is sculpted, layered, and added onto through the pedals that we use.
Sick. Thank you.
Maybe on the note of space and of traveling lightly, what was it like performing it in different venues, in different spaces with different sound?
Well, we were lucky because we had some very beautiful theaters to play in all over Europe. So it was generally very positive and fun, except for Copenhagen, where we had some drunk people right in the front row making a lot of noise, and was very unpleasant. And the next day in the airport in Stockholm, I met some black metal band called Lucifer, and we were both waiting for our equipment to come out of a different part of the luggage, right? And I saw their equipment said Lucifer, so I was like, hey, are you guys Lucifer? And they're like, yes, we are Lucifer, so great, you recognized us. And then they said, what are you doing? I said, well, we played last night in Copenhagen. They said, oh, you did? How did it go? I said, it didn't go well. That's because Denmark sucks. And they were Swedish, so I bonded with Lucifer,
Well, I feel like coffees are like $10 in Copenhagen, so that's all you need to know, maybe.
Well, I thought Copenhagen was cool. It's just our show wasn't. But, Lucifer, they didn't have a good feeling either. So.
We got another in the front here.
So I was just wondering if there's a sort of process of retaining fidelity when creating sound for what it was originally made to be a soundless work.
What's the question, though?
Well, I just didn't know how y'all necessarily discern I don't know, it fits so well, and I can't even imagine anything else being played with it at this point, but I'm just kind of impressed and wondering how y'all even came to, get the sort of auditory aesthetic to match the visual aesthetic so well, and if any sort of process went into that.
Our music's quite dark in a way, and the only time, and the films we're presented as silent films initially. Man Ray did present them a few times. I think Carter knows better the historical thing, but with sort of hot jazz from the 20s, early 30s, which would be a very, very different thing, kind of light and speedy. So yeah, I was thinking tonight, in fact, like, wow, our shit's pretty dark, you know? And I don't know how that would even be with sort of that kind of jazz under it. And we've watched them silent too, of course, but then our brains were imagining creating music. So one thing I find interesting is there's a kind of intersection between surrealism and the altering of consciousness by accepting dreams and altered reality and even mental illness in a way, and discovering different ways of seeing things that the surrealists were very interested in. And there's an intersection with psychedelia for me, because psychoactive agents also alter your consciousness in a different way, but there's a place where they certainly meet. And I think we kind of found a certain back alley where they meet with these really beautiful and strange films, and a kind of, we're not on psychedelic drugs, we weren't while creating it, but we're very appreciative of altered consciousness by particularly psilocybin or mushrooms, right? So there's something interesting there where they kind of fit in a way.
Yeah, a sort of unified function of hypnosis, sort of, in like.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hypnosis, and just a widening of what our priorities are, how you see reality, how it's presented to you. So
Thank you so much. As someone who watches a lot of Stan Brakhage films on psychedelics, y'all should do that next.
Got it.
And I guess maybe on all those notes of silent films, silently shrooms, opening our consciousness, I think we have to wrap up.
can't we take one more question?
We can take one more. I got the wrap up, but you can go there.
Thank you very much for showing this. If you have seen a lot more of Man Ray, and what was the criteria to choose these four? And how this experience of this project will lead you to a next one?
Well, these are the only 4 films that he made. He worked with Marcel Duchamp on a film, Anemic Cinema. He worked with Léger on Ballet Mécanique. He worked with René Clair on a film. But these are the only films Man Ray actually created. And the second part of the question?
How we take inspiration from this going forward. I think we kind of already have. Playing this music, we've been doing it for the past 7 or 8 years in a live form, and it's really affected our approach to quite a number of things, just as others, were influenced what this became. One of the beautiful things I think about music is that I don't consider it to be permanent. It's transitory. The recording is just a document of that one version and that one variation. We leave space for this to continue to grow and be refined and reformed through what we do always. So we look forward to continuing to playing this and taking, pieces of it as necessary, forward.
And one thing that I see is that, Man Ray's creative output was very fluid in that he made paintings early on. He developed photographic techniques. He was the first person to kind of employ airbrushing, solarization, which he kind of, maybe Lee Miller might have actually discovered, but shared with him. He made jewelry, he designed lamps, he made chess pieces, he used a lot of different forms. And one thing that I take from this, which is, and then I'll stop talking, but his parents were emigres they're Russian Jewish immigrants. His father was a tailor, his mother a seamstress. And throughout all of these films and other work that he made, you find little details of mundane objects from tailoring. So you see little tailor pins, you see buttons, you see the shirt collars in one of the films. You see spools of thread. You see a lot of very mundane objects that in his life were just things there that they were familiar. And yet he took these objects and used them in his work. So what I love is taking that idea, which I'm very interested in, minor details in life that might be inspirational in some way, you know? So I find that really inspiring in Man Ray. That's just one thing I find inspiring, but I love that he took these very mundane little things from his life, from his parents, from his home when he was young, and you see them recurring throughout, and I don't know, I find that inspiring somehow.
Well, thank you guys for such an inspiring evening.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you all for coming on this Sunday evening when you could have been home doing your laundry or something.